I guess related to, I think that the interdisciplinary knowledge that Michigan has given me. One of the aha moments is actually figuring out what my own perspective is. And this is something that I only came to in the last year. So where like an art historian will be like, oh, I'm firmly rooted in new historicism, or I'm firmly rooted. We don't have sort of that, like we're not even there yet. Like that's a much more specific boundary. But for me, it's figuring out that what I am is a design historian. So a lot of times the question within history theory is, are you a theorist or are you a historian? Which is a funny question already because the two are so related. And then there are gradations in between. So you can be a theorist with historical inclinations, or you can be a historian with theoretical inclinations. So amongst all of that, what I figured out is I'm a design historian. So, which is different because if you're an architectural historian, it's what you generally assumed is that the object that you study is the building.
Okay.
For me, I'm actually studying the design process, or the discipline of design. So yeah, so that idea has really, like, that was a pretty big aha, because one of the things that's always been a little uneasy for me is the fairly strong Western focus that I have, which on the one hand it makes sense because the discipline I'm studying is a Western discipline, but until I figured out I was a design historian, I felt very uneasy about the fact that, like,
you're ignoring one
like,
whole
why
half.
am I ignoring every other tradition?
Yeah.
It's because I'm actually looking at the history of this tradition.
Right.
And I think maybe when I'm a more mature scholar, I will be able to branch that out and do some comparison. But at this point, it's enough just to like figure out, because our own history is so overwritten. You know, it's got sort of like that winners, you know, the various. It was so funny. I was just reading or watching the documentary channel was running Tall, which is this great documentary on basically Chicago, Louis Sullivan, Chicago school, that kind of stuff. But even listening to that, like, it's so much the victor's history, because in the end, it's all like everything is presented marching towards modernism. It's like that very inevitable, right, and Sullivan was so. You know, had so much foresight. And it's because we marched towards it. And so, like, you know, you've got this antagonism between he and Burnham, and like the whole historicizing movement. But Louis Sullivan was always this genius, and it's always because we know that march. And so here's this history, which is definitely the history that I was taught when I was in design school.
Oh, sure.
But so now it's, you know, it's so much more. So much more open now, so like all the complexities and the importance of all the debates going on is so much more apparent now, and so like just plunging into that and understanding how the history of our discipline and our aesthetic preferences and our theories have evolved, and the history of that evolution is sort of the thing that I study, and so it's kind of enough to open that all up to me for now. Before I like try to then again, you know, look at some of the less, which of course there are influences from other cultures.
Right. So getting fully grounded in this tradition before you go off and try to find
and understanding the, particularly like as you know, I'm looking very closely at the methods that designers are using and how those put a structural influence on the kinds of things that can be designed, and so just figuring out how there is sort of the victor's history written on top of that as well. And so the amazing thing is that everything we do, I mean, this is going pretty deep into my topic, but like everything we do is processed through drawing and through the kinds of priorities that drawing gives to architecture. And architectural history was really born after drawing was adopted. And so all of drawing's priorities serve as lenses as we look back through history. But as soon as you say no, drawing is a historic artifact and it's part of the history of our discipline, then you have to allow that all of those histories have been these victor histories, and that we actually have been fairly narrowly focused when we've looked at Greek architecture or Roman architecture, because we've always assumed the same architectural priorities then as we have today. So we want to look at proportion, we want to look at form, we want to look at how an object looks as the primary aspect that you can speak about architecture with, and that's not necessarily the same priorities that those cultures brought. So like that for me already that's kind of breaking